Hey, what's up, guys? I'm here with a breakdown of perhaps one of the better cards in recent memory, UFC 239 Jones vs. Santos. This is a new video series I'm going to be doing, which I'll essentially be examining each main card fight and explaining what each individual fighter has to do to win. Now, I'm in no way an MMA coach, and I realize a lot of you guys may disagree with my preliminary analyses. I'm mainly just having a bit of fun here discussing some of the fights and some of the game plans we might see. So, the main event features Jon Jones, perhaps the greatest MMA fighter of all time, against Thiago Santos, a former middleweight that has experienced a violent career resurgence since moving to light heavyweight. So with that being said, let's go to the clipboard and break down our main event. To start, it is imperative that Jon Jones controls the distance of this fight and fights at his preferred range. When fighting a guy like Santos, the margin for error is so incredibly small that one mistake can put you in grave danger. We've seen Jones at his best when he uses single yet consecutive long-range striking attacks like oblique kicks, head kicks, and straight punches. Jones has an 8.5-inch reach advantage in this fight, and it's critical that he doesn't let Thiago get within striking range. Against mostly everyone, save for maybe OSP and Gustafsson, Jones's control of distance has been insurmountable, and that's what he needs to employ here. Now, in the event that he does get in close with Thiago, he can't stay in the mid-range. That's where Santos is most dangerous. Instead, Jones needs to clinch, and this is really where he does some of his best work, actually. If you watch the Glover fight, the DC fight, and even some portions of the Smith fight, Jon Jones puts a hurting on people in the clinch, from the shoulder cranks to the elbows to uppercuts to even spinning elbows on the break. Now, third, and this is where I think the highest likelihood for Jon to finish the fight is in his grappling, and particularly his top control. Jones has finished many opponents by taking them down, getting on top, and employing vicious ground and pound. If Jones gets on top of Santos, I'm not sure he'll be able to survive the onslaught of limbs thrown his way. Now, for Thiago Santos, his best weapon is easily his kicks. He's trained in capoeira for most of his life, and his resume is full of highlight reel head kick and spinning kick knockouts. This is really going to be an area that we should look for him to have some success. While Santos' arms won't let him get in close to Jones, perhaps his kicks can really accrue some damage and close that distance. Next, now this one is easier said than done, but he can't freeze up. Anthony Smith spoke extensively about this. When you're fighting Jon Jones, you tend to overthink and therefore become inactive. Smith described it as when he felt like he could strike, he thought he was going to be taken down. When he was going to throw a kick, he thought he was going to be countered. Santos needs to keep his head in the fight and remain unflustered throughout. Next, he needs to make it a dogfight. He can't try to outskill Jon Jones, and I think he knows that. A fair amount of times, we've seen Santos fight against people that seemingly have more skill than him, yet invariably end up getting knocked out. Take the Jack Hermanson fight, for example. At some point in the fight, Santos seemingly just said screw it and started throwing kicks and punches, and it really overwhelmed the Joker en route to a brutal stoppage. And finally, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but there was a recent interview in which Thiago essentially said that we've never seen Jon Jones on his back, and we've never seen him endure a violent ground and pound. Now, I don't know if trying to wrestle Jon to the floor is the best idea, considering DC had little success doing so, but hey, if by some chance Thiago gets on top, I suppose it could get very interesting. Now, I'm not one that's huge on fight predictions per se, because there's just so many variables that it's impossible to conclude a winner, but I think the likeliest scenario is that Jon Jones will at some point get on top of Santos and finish him via strikes or submission, and I keep picturing in my head elbows from the crucifix position. But take that with a grain of salt. Next, let's look at the highly anticipated bout between Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm for the bantamweight title. Amanda is on the greatest win streak in women's history, and Holly is challenging once again for the 135-pound title. For Nunes, it is imperative that she strikes early. Holm is usually a slow starter that doesn't tend to strike with much ferocity in the early portions of the fight. This is when Nunes needs to pounce and earn her respect early to take control of the fight. Additionally, we've seen Nunes in some pretty skilled grappling exchanges in the past. She obliterated Sheila Gaff on the mount, managed Shevchenko in that first fight, and showed great control against Pennington. Now, these are things that we haven't really seen from Holly Holm, save for that Megan Anderson fight, and this might be a viable route to victory for Nunes, or at least a way for her to incur damage. Third, it is imperative that Nunes stays off the fence. Time and time again, we have seen Holly Holm muscle opponents against the cage and control the round. She even did it against much larger opponents like Germaine de Randamie and Cyborg. In fact, this is where she had the most success against Cyborg. It really seemed like Cyborg just couldn't get off that fence at times. For Holm, she cannot engage in a firefight with Amanda Nunes. She needs to stick and move. She needs to land strikes and get the hell out of the way. We have seen Amanda Nunes slow, particularly in that Zingano fight and in that first Shevchenko fight. Holly needs to tire out Nunes over time and increase the output as the fight goes on. She also needs to employ a kick-heavy game, and that's no secret as her kicks are probably the best part of her striking game, and these can cause serious problems for Amanda Nunes. Finally, like we just sort of mentioned, she needs to push Nunes up against that cage and control her. If she can combine these 4 essential components, I really think she can put something special together and perhaps capture that title. To be honest though, I think Nunes is the hardest hitting female fighter on earth, and I think Holm has a tendency to get hit, particularly early, and I think Nunes is just on a special path right now in MMA, and I'm not sure who beats her. I think she'll get it done within 2 rounds. Now here's a really fun fight. Askren just controversially defeated Robbie Lawler, who I thought was his toughest matchup in the division. And it really seems like people kind of forgot about that fight, that Robbie nearly knocked him out within 15 seconds, and if maybe the referee thought a little bit differently or there was a different ref in there, we very well could be living in a world where Lawler knocked out Askren in 11 seconds in his debut. But it doesn't really matter because he showed insane determination and came back to win. And then there's Jorge Masvidal, who's coming off of a sensational one-punch knockout over Darren Till, and in many aspects, this is the keystone moment of his career. For Masvidal, he's got to stay calm and control the pace. Too often against Ben Askren, you see fighters become frantic and erratic. They try to strike early and go berserk and really get Ben Askren out of there. Now, it did work for Robbie, but even he ended up getting grabbed and controlled and eventually submitted, or whatever you want to consider it. When you employ this tactic, Askren typically gets on top of you. Masvidal needs to slow things down and time his combinations. He needs to throw sparingly, at least initially, but throw hard nonetheless. Finally, he's definitely getting taken down, but while on the bottom, he needs to try to employ as much damage as possible without giving up a position or submission. For Askren, the game plan is the same as it always is. Stay close, do not stay on the outside where Masvidal could hurt you, and get funky. What does that mean? Do what he always does. Positional control, strikes from the top. Ultimately, I think we'll get a rather routine Askren performance here. I expect him to control most of the fight. I'm sure Masvidal will get his licks in, but ultimately I think Askren picks up a decision. Next, we have Rockhold's 205 debut. Moving up in weight has been beneficial for a lot of people, like Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith. We're going to see if it's the same for Luke Rockhold. Now, against Jan Blachowicz, he needs to pick his shots. Rockhold is at his best, not when he's trading shots, but when he's firing off well-timed single shots, like that head kick against Bisping in the first fight. In fact, it was the exit of an exchange where Bisping caught him in the rematch. He needs to avoid wild exchanges and fire off single strikes from distance. Among those single strikes, his kicks are probably the best at middleweight, and we're going to see how that power translates to light heavyweight. The body kicks against Costa Philippou were just nasty, and I think he can employ some of these same techniques on Saturday with great success. Finally, he really is a tremendous grappler, and I think that's his main ingredient for success here. Look at the Tim Boesch fight, look at the Machida fight, look at the Weidman fight, the David Branch fight. His grappling and top control is second to none. And we've seen Jan control before. Now, against Rockhold, Jan Blachowicz needs to strike hard and strike early. That's what David Branch tried to do, and it damn near worked. He needs to make Rockhold trade punches and try to sting him early. Against Jimmy Manoa, in the rematch, he displayed some tremendous dirty boxing and hurt Jimmy on multiple occasions. That's definitely a viable game plan for Rockhold. He's just got to stay in close and not let Luke strike from a distance. finally, he's got to circle off. He can't get pushed against the cage or taken down. He needs to be a moving target to avoid being grabbed by Rockhold. Ultimately, though, I think at some point Luke will get on top, hurt him with some strikes, and get a submission. I think this could be a real showcase for Luke Rockhold. For the final fight of the main card, we have the new welterweight, Michael Chiesa, against Diego Sanchez. Now, Chiesa just ran through Carlos Condit, and Sanchez destroyed Mickey Gall, so both guys have some real momentum. However, this is a pretty straightforward one as far as I can tell. I expect it to be a grappling-heavy affair. For the most part, for Chiesa, he's got to utilize his length and strike from a distance. He's got to control the pace of the fight, and he cannot let Diego berserk forward. In the grappling exchanges, he needs to maintain top control, and if taken down, he has shown excellent submissions off his back and stellar sweeps. He loves the back control, and I think that's an area of strength for him in this fight. For Diego, he's got to make it one of those typical Diego fights. He's got to press forward, control the range, likely by keeping Chiesa against the cage and by dirty boxing. In the striking exchanges, he needs to turn it into a brawl. He can't try to just outstrike Chiesa, the longer, lankier fighter, shot for shot. And like Chiesa, he needs to maintain that top control, and I think that's when he has his best success in fights, when he's on top, delivering, punishing ground and pound. I expect this to be a really fun one, actually, but I think Chiesa will ultimately pick up a decision win in one of those back-and-forth fights, maybe fight of the night. And here's the rest of the card. Clearly, we've got some fun ones. The rise of Arnold Allen continues against Gilbert Melendez, who really needs a win here. This is do or die for his career. Marlon Chito Vera finally got an opponent after Sean O'Malley pulled out. We got Claudia Gadelha versus Randa Marcos. That's a fun one. And then Yadong Song has a lot of hype. Overall, I'm really looking forward to this card a lot. What do you guys think of the breakdown and picks? Also, I'm going to be uploading content to this channel more regularly, so stay tuned. Comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see what happens at UFC 239 on Saturday. Take care, guys.